can talk now? Okay. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I have to say I was overcome with a lot of emotion today that I really didn't expect, honestly. I think it's joy. No, I know it's joy. I'm sorry. For so many reasons. I think one of the most profound experiences that I had over the last 2 weeks was when I was preparing through rereading a lot of material by our co-founders, Myrtle Fillmore and Charles Fillmore, and reacquainting myself with truth and prayer and healing and the word Holy Spirit. As we are approaching World Day of Prayer and what it means to have conscious formation as we all join together as one mind, I found that we have science behind us in this thing called neurotheology. And I was humbled in one moment because I remember when we first came into Unity and were introduced to it, Dana and I remember thinking to myself, my gosh, actually I said my God because I'm still in Jersey, this guy, he's phenomenal. He's like super smart. Like I love Charles Fillmore, which you guys have heard so many times from me. I love Charles Fillmore. And I often wondered, where the heck did they get this data from? Like, how did they know this stuff? How did this stuff just come in 1846? And as I was taking a lot of my coursework, I realized that it was called New Thought, and I kept thinking, but it's new now. How can that still be relevant? How does it really manage to prove itself over the test of time? What's going on that really makes this come alive every single day? And it really only changes based on the emphasis that I apply. Me. Not you guys, me. Because one of our real understandings that my thoughts are prayers. Mine. So the only person in the room that can be responsible for me isn't Tom, it's me. I'm responsible. I'm responsible for my thoughts, my actions, and my focus. That was like mind-blowing reminder again this week. And the reason why was because when I searched back, Teddy and I had an interesting conversation last week about the Unity Basics class, and she said, oh, Myrtle, if it wasn't for Myrtle, we wouldn't have a Unity. Because Myrtle was really the one that got it going. And she did. Myrtle got it going when she decided to apply information that she received in a training from Weeks, that was the person's name, into herself to heal herself. And so the first thing that I need to remind us is that that means that Myrtle didn't have a glass ceiling. Do you guys know what a glass ceiling is?
Oh, yeah.
What's a glass ceiling?
It's a limitation.
It's a limitation, but
And it usually applies to women. It's a glass ceiling.
That's just
You
one
can see the other side.
Yeah.
It's a
A limitation, I like that.
it's a, okay. Well, I'm sorry, Kay, hold on.
Barrier, it keeps you down.
It keeps you down, it's a barrier. I have to do this. Are you ready? Kay said it's a barrier.
You can't do that.
Now I can't? Oh, okay. I have a limitation. It's a barrier. Apparently, in Unity, we need to have the color green associated with non-limitation. What else do we know about glass ceilings?
It gives you a headache when you break through.
Really? Hold on. Say that again. Listen to Kay's infinite wisdom here.
Yeah.
Come on, Kay.
Said it gives you a headache when you break through it.
Trying, Ninus is trying to break through.
Kay is one of the people that has broken in class.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right? Tell us, Kay.
That has nothing to do with it.
You certainly did.
Can somebody tell us about this glass ceiling?
All right, correct me if I'm wrong. First female police person, DC? FBI? Secret Service.
She's making you guess.
I'm
It's a multiple choice question.
it's pretty incredible.
Yes.
Back in the day, she was number one.
She still is in our heart. Yep. Tony?
I was just going to say that it can be broken and Kay's a great example.
Okay. Anybody else have anything they want to add on?
Collective thought you're talking about.
What do you mean by collective thought, Claire?
Are you imitating my accent?
I was practicing my one-ship with you. I was only teasing you.
Well, this is what we, when you come from California to Virginia, there is a collective thought here that you almost have to break through. And it could be the FBI, the CIA, everything that is here that has to be secret, which you all walk in. Now I'm walking in it too, because I've lived here for 3 years. But this is a consciousness you have to be aware of.
And Charles Fillmore calls that race consciousness. He talks about this thing called race consciousness that doesn't mean the elevated consciousness of truth, capital T. He talks about race consciousness as a consciousness that has lived actually within our DNA and runs through our body that is a limitation. And so when we look at what's the basis of prayer here for unity and why is it that we come together here in prayer, it is really about the self, as I said before, but also in correlation with others, which is why it's super wonderful when we all come together and experience this collective feeling of love here. It's why this has energy to it. It's why when we look in somebody's eyes and hear them say, I was underprepared, we hold that space and know that everything's perfect. It's okay. Everything is good. So back to Myrtle and her glass ceiling, or none of the glass ceiling. So Myrtle really decided to invigorate herself with the principles that she knew. And many of you probably know the story of Myrtle's healing. Is that true? No?
Tell it.
Okay. So Myrtle decided that she was going to heal herself. And so she closed herself in her room. Oh, tuberculosis. Thank you. I appreciate that. She closed, which she had had for a very long time. And she was very sickly as a child and really struggled. And honestly, the trajectory of where she was going at that time wasn't going to be very positive. And at that time, living in that house with Charles, she had help from, I believe it was Charles' mother, who used to help her care for the children. And so she actually had a lot of support in her house to be able to care for her ailing body. Now, let's run back. There was this belief system that was often spoken that said, if you are sick and you need healing, and some people took that to mean there's something wrong with you. There's error thinking. But you see, we have to really be still in our own minds with words like that, because our words are very powerful. And really, that spoken word, or sometimes it's a written word, if you're reading and taking it in one dimension, what happens then is we begin to have duality in our own thinking. And the question arises, well, how can I be whole and healed, which is what God says, when I'm filled with error thought? How do those two things exist. Now, think back to I think it was a month ago when I was here and I said we can't hold thoughts of debt and thoughts of prosperity together. Those two things do not go together. This is the same experience. So really, from a very practical and human space, it invites the question in ourselves, what's going on within me? What am I giving credence to? What am I promoting? How do I allow myself and my thoughts to go on a tangent over here when really I want to be focused over here? And then, what does really healing mean? Because we do have this human part of us that is always going to kind of have self-doubt, be fearful and not fearless. We have automatic thinking, which pops up before we ever even knew it happened. And sometimes the things that we say, when we become consciously aware, we go, wait, did that thought actually come out of me? It did. It did. And if that is the thought that is your prayer, it's interesting to just notice. Just notice. So, having had this awakening, Myrtle locks herself in her room, and the only people that she let in were individuals that she trusted could hold the vibration of absolute for her. And it was, I think, 2 months of consistent in-the-room isolation of repetitive prayer, or what we would call conditioning, I would call conditioning treatment, that allowed her to focus internally on what is happening and to soften the thoughts of negativity, soften the thoughts against others or against the self, and release any thoughts that no longer served her. She didn't have the glass ceiling. She broke it. And she was healed. And because of that healing, she started a healing practice where she would work with others and hold the consciousness needed to allow the shift to occur in the other person. When I first started studying, it was I think the name of the book was Spiritual Rebellions. I became enamored with this guy. His name was Quimby. I have his manuscripts. I love Quimby. Quimby was one of the beginners who talked about mesmering. And mesmering was a form of hypnosis. But what he quested was to be able to heal like Jesus did. He wanted to replicate the miracles that Jesus did. And so he would wonder how to do that. And what he learned was very similar to what Myrtle was doing, which was to hold the consciousness, the frequency. That's right, Claire. Until the other person was aligned and attuned and harmonized to that frequency, so that whatever thought was within them in that moment was washed away and cleared. Now the thing is we do know that this is true because it clears itself not just from the thought ethers, but from the body consciousness. The body consciousness. The body. This big, thick thing that we carry around, that we complain about the aches and pains, our weight, lack of sleep. Some teenagers complain about zits. I don't know, right? Yeah, it's a dense thing we have here. But there's so much happening within that we can't see. And so what happens, and what we know happens, is that how we apply our thoughts, how we apply the testament of what we are doing each and every day, changes the internal being of our body. Anybody here ever hear the saying, you are what you eat? Mm-hmm. Yeah. There's probably some people here who actually say that's not true. That's denial. I'm sorry. What?
I'm one of Barb's cookies.
Right, exactly, right? Yeah. But the truth is that we are what we eat, we are what we drink, we are what we do,
We are what we think.
we are what we think. And at any given time, can we say that we are enough? We are enough. Because it's one thing to be patient with our own personal evolution. And we have to be patient with our evolution. We do have this teacher, Myrtle, who said, hey, it took not overnight for me to evolve. So let's talk about Charles Fillmore for a second. Because after this miraculous healing, Charles was like, hey, me too, I want to do that. You can do it, I can do it, because you know what? I'm a guy. No, actually, that is what he said. It's in Christian Healing, page... No, I'm only kidding. And so we know that Charles had an accident earlier in his life, and so as a result of that, one leg was shorter than the other. You guys are aware of that, right? Now we are. Yes, that's exactly what happened. He had I think it was an ice skating accident, and based on that ice skating accident, one of his legs didn't grow, and so he ended up having one leg shorter than the other. And so he wanted to apply the same principle that his wife did and try to promote the growth of his leg. So this is interesting because he made progress. There was progress in his leg, but it didn't come to total balance. So it begs the question, was he healed or wasn't he healed? Anybody have thoughts on that?
It doesn't matter.
But it does matter in a way. It doesn't. I know where you're going. Go ahead and say it, because I know what you want to say.
Because if God wanted him to be totally healed, he would have done that, or himself. But there was still a lesson to learn.
Thank you. There was still a lesson to learn. That's the nugget. That's the nugget. That's right. There was still a lesson to learn. Right. Any thoughts? Can I offer one? Would that be okay? So in this world of healing that Myrtle and Charles talk about, they talk about the fact that we need to be able to align our thoughts, our mind, and our body together, and that's where the magic is. I brought a lot of notes. I don't often use them. But I want to just start in here, which was teach us to pray. Omnipresence, omniscient, and omnipotence are verities, thank you, of being and are facts of existence. The mind of God, the creative mind, is perpetually moving upon supermind ideas, and through them, bringing man and the universe into existence. So we're talking about this phenomenal, great existence that is beyond us, and through this, we are formed. Creative mind is everywhere present. I found that interesting that was part of our daily word today. Yet while it is within the mind of man, it lies beyond the consciousness of sense. Omnipresence is the spiritual realm that can be penetrated only through the most highly accelerated mind action, as in prayer. Thus, in unfolding this inner kingdom, we are dealing with a reality beyond the ordinary comprehension of man. To the suburbly tuned mind and brain of Jesus' divine mind was a soil eager with vibrant life and light and substance, which he used to produce the finest of materials for both character and bodybuilding. So he's talking about this inner landscape, and what are we doing to nurture it? What are we doing to weed it from thoughts or parts of ourselves that we can extinguish because they no longer serve us? We've all found ourselves in like one moment having a word blurt that was not kind, not loving, or sometimes it doesn't even come out in the word, it comes out in the thought, right? And that thought does have an imprint. Now, fortunately, we do know by one of the greatest laws, the law of attraction, that if that negative thought isn't overwhelmingly permeating, then what happens is it doesn't stick. It just floats right away. So even if we had a little negative thought, it doesn't mean that that's a part of us. It means, can we look at the preponderance of how we're thinking, how we're behaving, and what are we doing? And can we align ourselves with this high notion of truth? To speak truth faithfully is a healing system. So, what is truth? Right? Because it's not truth with a capital T. This was an interesting experience when we first started. We were talking about how Kay popped the glass thing, right? And look, she still is saying no, but we had a lot of people here that said yes. So Kay's truth may be different than other people's truth. Is that a capital T or a small t? Small t. God is power, man is powerful. God is wisdom, man is wise. God is substance, man is form and shape. God is love, man is loving. God is life, man is the living. God is mind, man is the thinker. God is truth, man is truthful. Does that resonate in your body? Isn't that amazing? Yeah. So Myrtle had this prayer that she wrote, and she recited it regularly when she was in her healing mind. It's the prayer of the faithful, and it's actually the second most popular prayer used in unity other than our prayer for protection. God is my help in every need. God does my every hunger feed. God walks beside me, guides my way through this moment every day. Now I am wise, I am now true, patient and kind and loving too. All things I am, can do, and be through Christ the truth that is in me. God is my health, I can't be sick. God is my strength, unfailing, quick. God is my all, I know no fear, since God and love and truth are here. So it's a catchy phrase, right? And in this current day of 2018, some of us might say, oh, that's just like a rote prayer, and why would I use that? And again, the reason why we go back to basics and why we employ and look at and adopt basics is because it helps condition our body and our mind and our spirit to align with the truth, with true thought. But that's not enough. It's not enough. Because what we now know is that it's not enough to just say the words. The words help to condition us. It's about aligning the heart with it. So when we look at this concept of courage to heal, which is what we're looking at on Thursday evening, what does that really mean? Courage to heal. It means to be willing to let go of the parts that no longer serve you. To be willing to look at your thoughts, look at your behaviors, and say, I have no more need for this. It was really interesting. I was at a training on Friday, all day. And one of the things that I learned is that when we experience a trauma as a person, because of the way our brain is wired, we go into fight, flight, or freeze. And what I learned is that if fight or flight is not completed, the person can end up with rage. Anybody in here know a person who has anger issues or themselves? And you don't have to raise your hands. Think about it though. And those people who who freeze and aren't able to move through their trauma end up with sadness. As a matter of fact, more and more, the way we're looking at our science of our body and our mind, we're able to understand that the very nature of our activities influence how our body is structured. The TM community was known for being able to meditate for hours. In fact, the TM community has a community of people that hold the vibration of meditation. That's their job all day. They come in teams, they rotate in and out, while the other people go out and earn money and go into the world because they're holding and setting that vibrationary stage. And so then, now you can go ahead and give me those little pictures. And so then, I'm getting hungry too. It's true. When we're looking at how the body reacts, there was a time where we were not able to look inside of the body at all to determine the way the body changes through prayer or meditation. But what happened was we were in, I don't know, do you know the time, 2009 I think it was? We were able to do the PET scans and the MRIs about that time.
Started
blowing up. Of people who were alive so that we could do comparisons on the brain before prayer or meditation and then in different levels. And since that time, there's been more and more research that talks about this. So right here, this is the picture of the brain. There's typos in here, but I couldn't fix the typos. I just found this. And so I'll apologize this. But faith biology affirms that praying has a huge power to cure disease. Concerning a new science, go on, prefrontal lobe becomes active while praying, which helps in making good decisions.
We can't really see that, so if you can keep reading it to us.
Oh, sure, thank you. Okay, great, okay. So then the upper area, does your little thing, does it make the little red?
I think it does.
No, shoot. You can see it? I can see it off here. Okay, that's not going to be very helpful. Okay. Okay, so then the upper area of the brain stays active while praying. The area behind the brain, it becomes the lowest active while praying. And that's really important because that area, which is on the lower part right before the stem over there, is responsible for some sickness and disease. They talk about, I'm sure it's not scruples, but epilepsy. And I think that's really the most important piece. Can you go on to the next one? So here it breaks it down a little bit more. And can you see then up here where it says prefrontal cortex? Up here it's the peach color. Oopsie, I did that. I'm sorry. I better put this down. The peach, and then that's the prefrontal cortex. And that's the frontal lobe area. So research by neurotheology indicates that during a deep state of meditation, your attention, religious emotions, sacred images, response to religious words, and cosmic unity are increased. So one of the things that's really cool is the sacred images, which it happens in that lower temporal lobe, and it's involved in the process by which images such as candles or crosses facilitate prayer and meditation. Now, I read an article by a person named Barbara Hayes, I think was her name. And this was a really cool article because she interviewed this person, I don't have the article with me, who was a United Methodist minister. And he changed from being a United Methodist minister into a Pentecostal minister. Very different, or Pentecostal, whatever. Very different faith traditions, right? And so during the interview, she said to him, "Why is it that you changed?" And he said, "One time I was in prayer, deep in prayer, and all of a sudden, through my closed eyes, I saw and heard God. And what God said to me is, 'You be the oil, and I will be the flame.'" And since he had that awakening and that mind sight through it, he left his faith tradition to find a faith tradition that spoke more clearly to being able to pop the frame and see outside of what was considered in his world basic. So what's really interesting is if we go back a couple of weeks when we talked about oil, and we talked about the meaning of oil is love. And so here is, there's a lot of quotes in the Bible, by the way, that match this. I just didn't have time to put a timeline together for you of that. But if you think about that, he's saying, hey, you be the love, and I'm going to fan your flame with my oil. I'm going to make that love so it's hot and moves out. That was my Christine Capshew impression of it. Thank you. At the juncture of three lobes, this region governs response to language. And when the parietal lobes are quiet down, a person can feel at one with the universe. So the middle temporal lobe is linked to emotional aspects of religion and experience such as joy and awe. So I'm going to do a quick self-disclosure here. I run anxious, for those of you who know that. You knew that about me? God. I run anxious, right? And I don't know when I started running anxious. I just knew that worry has always been a little part of me. And sometimes, worry can get a little blown up out of proportion and probably can drive some people that love me nuts. You don't have to agree so much, Dana. Everybody over there saw that agreement. I'm only kidding. And what's interesting is I remember one time in my life when my mom had her first stroke, and I was in Wilmington with her, and I was super anxious, and there was a lot of stuff going on, and I was active here at the church at that time. I was on the board, but I really had a lot of problem focusing. I had a hard time with making decisions, and my emotionality was really high. And as I was reading all this, I started asking myself, well, why, if I was attending church and I was like prayed up, as one of my old ministers would have said, why aren't the principles working? Dang it. Why am I still having trouble with cheerfulness and worrying about my mom and worrying about what other people are thinking about me and worrying about that I'm not doing enough here for church, and why? And I realized that even though I was active here in church, I was not fully present. I was not necessarily aligning with the words. I was not allowing the words to enter my internal orbit and change my DNA. The light of God surrounds us versus the light of God surrounds us. It reminded me back of when I was previously a Catholic, and I would go to Mass, and they would do the consecration in under 5 minutes. I mean, I know Jesus could do that, but the priest, I'm not sure. So that was a really big awakening for me. So what we know is that this guy named, what's the first guy's name?
Newberg.
Newberg, he's the one that initiated all of these studies. Well, he's my brain guy. Okay, thanks. And so he was the one that started this in 2009, understanding that there is something going on with prayer. And there's some effect on it, and he's the one that started all the research. This other guy, his name is Dickinson, decided that he was going to run a parallel experiment. And what he did is he took a monk and he hooked the monk up to these brain things. And what he looked at, what he saw there is that they've been looking for 12 years at the effects of long-term and short-term mind training through meditation on attention, compassion, on emotional balance, and they found remarkable results. 15% improvement in some cases. Okay. And so here it kind of breaks it down. So I wish we did have a little pointer, because now I know you can't say. On the...
You are the Lord.
You guys, come on, right? Okay, so over here, this is the baseline, and over here, this is after meditation. And what I want you to notice is up there on the frontal lobe part where there's more red, that's what we're talking about in terms of the connection. Right there. That increase in the red is really important. The frontal lobe is responsible for controlling emotions and agitation in humans. And it's also important for the acquisition and practice of complicated perception movement abilities. Can you move on one more time now? So this one here, isn't this awesome?
On the right.
However, let's get right down to here, this after 25 minutes. Tom told me when I was showing them this, and like, wow, this is some cool stuff I found. He's like, oh yeah, that picture has a mohawk. I was like, wait, what?
It's not quite what I said, but...
Why would I let the truth get in the way of a good story? Right? See that red? It's the mohawk of self-perception. Mm-hmm.
Ability to reflect on yourself.
Did you hear him? It's the ability to reflect on ourselves. So let's tie this back in for a second. So if I say to you, which is where we began, I said one of the things that we really need to be able to do is to stop what we're doing and take a look at ourselves, right? And decide what is it that we're doing that's wonderful and lovely, and what are some of the parts of ourselves that we're willing to and being courageous about allowing to release. If we don't have a mohawk, we might not be that efficient at it. Which then inspires us to understand that in order to gain the mohawk, we need to be able to bring ourselves into this alignment of meditation or prayer. Cool stuff, right?
Yeah, very, very much so.
That's where God says, Christine, put your ego away. You are not the wild, wild west. Forget it. So these are the pictures I wanted to share with you today. It's not really where I had inspired this talk to go to when I first started, but it surely I thought was really relevant to help us understand why it's important that we do what we do. Why is it important that we focus on our unity principles? Why is it important that we slow ourselves down? Why is it important that we be mindful when we talk about mindful? Some great things that we can do is say cancel if we don't like what we just said out of our mouths, and then have a redo. And in our unity family, we're all free to practice that because we're all on the same journey. We're all on the same path. And so we have this unbelievable ability to forgive. So, let's do a meditation. So one of the way we're going to do this meditation is going to be a little bit different today, which means I don't know what it's going to be yet. And what I wanted to read to you before, this comes from a writer that Charles Fillmore quoted. So settle down. Find a space that's comfortable. Consider the significance of silence. It is boundless. Never by meditating to be exhausted, unspeakably profitable to thee. Cease that chaotic hubbub. Speech is silvern, silence is golden. Speech is human, silence divine. The intellect is always busy, jumping from one thing to another, much of the time dwelling on the daily routine of a workday, conditions of the world. So the first step is scientific silence. Simply silence and still the outer sounds so that the consciousness may become subservient to the spirit within. God works in the stillness. So today we're going to allow Dana's music to soothe us and bring us in to our heart, and close the door once we enter the space of our heart.
I open up my heart to you. I open up my heart to you. You're free to come inside. The door is open wide. I open up my heart to you. I release my pain to you. I release my pain to you. There's no need to hold on now. My pain is gone. I release my pain to you. I surrender myself to you. I surrender myself to you. My ego steps aside. My heart is open wide. I surrender myself